Planner Newberry will be moderating the Zoom meeting and will be asked to provide names of those individuals that wish to speak, again as hands are raised. I would like to call the meeting of the City of Wildwood's Board of Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Jared Frank, board member, Deborah Coleman, board member, Arnie Sprunger, board member, Bob Nandor, alternate, and myself, Mary Giles, chair. The Department of Planning staff present is Joe Vunich, Director of Planning, Travis Newberry, planner, and Chris Parker, administrative assistant. City Attorney John Young and court reporter Courtney Tallman are also present. First, I offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting, October 20th, 2020, and take official notice of the zoning ordinance of the City of Wildwood, including Chapter 400, Article 2, authorizing and establishing the Board of Adjustment's powers and duties. Now, let me explain how the hearing procedure. Please be aware the information I'm about to describe is also provided on the Board of Adjustment public hearing procedure handout, which was available online prior and up to tonight's meeting. This is an informal type of hearing. However, the meeting's proceedings will be recorded by a reporter for future transcription if needed. The petitions are called in the order listed on the agenda. As the petition is called, I will ask a Department of Planning staff member to read each request into the record. Thereafter, the Department of Planning will have opening remarks and a brief slide presentation. Then the petitioner or their representative will be asked to state their name and address, be sworn in by the court reporter, and make a brief presentation to the board explaining the nature of the requested variance and the hardship necessitating it. The board will only consider the nature and condition of the property and whether those factors mandate a variance in order to allow for its full utilization. Board members may ask questions to clarify the facts of the petitioner's presentation. When the board is satisfied with the material presented by the petitioner, the chair will then ask if there's anyone present online who would like to speak in favor or opposition to the request. Each speaker will be asked to provide their name and address, be sworn in, and then state their comments. Procedurally, the petitioner may request a continuance at any time during the hearing prior to a call for the vote in order to bring in additional documentation or information. The board may also request a continuance to gather additional information or for a further visit to the site. After the conclusion of input from all interested parties, the board will ask a staff person to provide the Department of Planning's report on this matter if requested by any member of the board, the petitioner, or any individual that is participating online. Additionally, any other information not presented in the previous testimony but pertinent to the request will be noted at this time. Once all speakers have been heard, the chair will call for a motion to grant or deny with or without conditions, then the board will vote. At that time, the discussion relating to the petition is concluded and no further input will be permitted. The board will generally make a decision today. 4 members of the board must vote in favor of the petition for it to be approved. If a variance is approved, the petitioner has 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use, or it will expire. If the board's decision is unfavorable, the petitioner has the right of appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. This appeal must be done within 30 days of the decision. Travis, are there any questions at this time? Hearing no questions at this time, the board will proceed. May the first request be read into the record, which will be followed by initial comments by the Department of Planning and a brief slide presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, the first and only item on tonight's agenda is Board of Adjustment BA 24-20, Jonathan and Katie Heil, care of Joe Wiedemeyer, 1600 Heritage Landing, St. Charles, Missouri, 63303. Request an exception to the specific yard requirements and exceptions for the purpose of constructing a private stable, which is to be located upon the property addressed as 1289 Christmas Valley Drive, St. Louis County, locator number 20V230237, parcel A of section 2445-3, boundary adjustment. If granted, this variance would thereby authorize a side yard setback distance of 85 feet in lieu of the required 100-foot standard, which is specific to private stables. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Residence District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance. A similar request was submitted for consideration by the Board of Adjustment at its September 17, 2020 meeting, but a 70-foot requested setback distance. This particular property is located within Ward 3.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry.
Madam
Does
Chair,
the
with
Department
your,
of Planning have any initial comments?
yes, Madam Chair. Before proceeding forward with the hearing on this particular request, the Department of Planning would like to enter into the record the following items. 400 Article 2, the Board of Adjustment from the City of Wildwood's Municipal Code, Chapter 415, the zoning ordinance, again from the City of Wildwood Municipal Code. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this particular petition and all contents contained therein, including the department's recommendation report. And then finally, all items that are offered as testimony or evidence tonight at this public hearing. Madam Chair, as you mentioned, the department does have a slide presentation ready to show regarding this particular request. I think for some of you that were participants in the September 2020 meeting will recognize that the slides have not been changed out just due to the month difference, but they, I hope, will provide you a framework for tonight's discussion. Mr. Newberry, thank you. As has been the practice of the Department of Planning, the first slide that's presented to the board for consideration and review is a general location type. The subject site, as you can see, is located in the center of the slide and highlighted by the turquoise line. The site is located in the Christmas Valley subdivision, and this is in an area of large lot single family dwellings on properties that are 3 acres or greater in size. This is a better image of the subject site. This is, again, the location of the requested variance. The turquoise line outlines the subject site. As you can see, there is a single family dwelling located on it, a couple of accessory uses or structures, and a key physical feature, the drainage tributary that bisects the property into uneven halves. Same aerial photograph of the property in many regards, but in this particular instance, the topography of the property has been added. As you can see, the pasture area has fewer topographic lines indicating a leveler or flatter surface. And as you cross the drainage tributary, the topographic lines increase in number, indicating a steeper slope. Again, knowing it's fall now, but this is from September. This is a photograph of the access, the driveway to petitioner's single family dwelling. The drainage tributary is located on the left-hand side of the screen. And here again is a view of the roadway that serves this particular subject site and others in its vicinity, and it's Christmas Valley Drive. This is looking to the east. There is a low water crossing in association with the drainage tributary. This is on Christmas Valley Drive, and this is Christmas Valley Drive as it trends past the entry area into the subject site and then heads south and eventually west to around the pasture area. Again, just an image photograph of the drainage tributary at that low water crossing. This is looking to the west. This is the pasture area that is the subject of the request. The proposed stable will be located in the background of the particular photograph or toward that fence that Mr. Newberry has just highlighted. It is a very pretty setting. Again, just kind of going down Christmas Valley Drive to the west. As I mentioned in September, I survived the car passing by. And again, this is a good view of the pasture area that is the subject of consideration. This is just kind of looking back from a property that is across Christmas Valley Drive from the pasture. Kind of just gives you a different perspective. in an area of the pasture where the stable is not being proposed. And this is just another photograph of the pasture area to kind of give you a perspective of the drainage tributary, the woodlands that are in association with that area of the property, and just a general idea of slope as well. Here is the location of the proposed stable, again in the pasture area. The fence line does not necessarily reflect the actual property line, the western property line of the subject site. And again, remember these stakes, the 4 that are shown in white, represent the 70-foot setback from the September meeting. Again, tonight's request is for a 85-foot distance or a 15-foot reduction to the 100-foot standard. And again, this is just looking in the opposite direction of the same general area. Instead of looking from east to west, we're now looking west to east. And this is kind of just straight on to the general stable location. And it also gives a pretty good perspective of the drainage tributary and its characteristics. And in the background of the photograph, you can see the single-family dwelling. And just a close-up of the area where the stable is being proposed. Again, this is the westernmost portion of the property. I mentioned, and this was brought up in the September 2020 hearing, the fence line is not on the westernmost property line of the subject site. It's set off just a bit to the east, but I wanted to give you a perspective of that as well. This is the nearest neighbor adjoining to the west. This is the access drive to his property and home. The home is in the upper left corner. You can see the white between the leaves of the trees. And as you can see, his access driveway crosses the same drainage tributary. And then you can notice the slope there as well. This is a property in proximity across Christmas Valley Drive. I provided this just to kind of give you a perspective in terms of topographic relief in the area on one side of the street versus the other. And there is also a pasture area located on this particular lot as well. You have received a number of comments relative to this request. The green circles with the white check mark reflect comments that were favorable to the request. The red circles with the white X were not favorable to the request. And then the gold star is the actual location of the variance request, the Hiles property. And again, this is the site plan that has been resubmitted in conjunction with the current request. It now reflects an 85-foot setback distance from the south boundary line. And in this case, a 15-foot reduction in the required 100-foot distance. And just another representation. The Hiles have also provided the architectural drawings for the stable. And as you can see, we have 2 elevations on this particular slide, the south and north. The south would be facing toward the road, and then the north facing toward the single-family dwelling. The west elevation will face the neighbor, and then the east will face toward the pasture that extends some distance back to the easterly direction. And then just a floor plan in association with the stable, as is referenced in the report, and some of you heard at the September 2020 hearing. There are 3 horse stalls, a tack room, a tack stall, some potential additional stall trailer storage, and an outdoor porch, and then a horse pen. Madam Chair and members of the board, that is the presentation by the department. If there's any questions regarding the slides or any of the matters that the department described in presenting, then I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Director Vunich. Are there any questions from the board for Director Vunich of the Department of Planning? All right, can the petitioner please state your name, address, in relation to the property?
Hi, Jonathan Heil. I'm the petitioner. Live at 1289 Christmas Valley Drive. My wife Katie's here with me tonight.
And you're the owners of the property?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you. Can you please be sworn in by the court reporter?
Certainly.
Testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howe, can you please explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance?
Certainly. We are looking to bring our property a few feet further away from the creek where the elevation starts to drop, and to give ourselves a little separation from trees and hopefully avoid some problems with limbs falling and things of that nature.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Heil. Are there any questions from the board members for Mr. Heil?
I have one question
Okay.
on the on the architectural site plan. Seeing the creek bed, and then there's a line on there that kind of goes just behind the subject property, and I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure if that's an elevation line or if that's depicting some other feature of the property. It's at the 560 line. Is that just an elevation marcation?
Can we bring the diagram up and make sure we're looking at the same visual?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's very clear right through the large tree to the left, and then just in front of the 3 other trees behind the subject property. Is that an elevation line, or is right there? Yes.
Ask Joe.
I believe so. We do have our architect, Joe Wiedemeyer, on, who does a few more of these, who I would ask to confirm. I don't want to say anything invalid, but that certainly looks like a little bit of an elevation. And I know the property well enough to know that it does slope down there. I strongly suspect that's to represent slope.
Is that a flood line, do you believe?
I've never seen flooding out there. I guess I would need to understand what a flood line is and how to answer that.
Mr.
Okay.
Gander,
Yes.
if I could assist on that particular issue, the Department of Planning advertised the request just as a variance in the NU non-urban resident district. At first glance, the department thought there might be some floodplain on the property, but based upon our zoning maps, there is not. So I think this is like a lot of drainage tributaries in Wildwood. It's dry most of the time, but when we get a heavy rain or an extended rain, it fills then, reaches its high elevation, and then quickly recedes and becomes a dry bed again. But no floodplain as best as we could tell from our investigation.
Gotcha. Okay, then from I guess maybe a subjective viewpoint, would it stand to reason that water wouldn't likely go beyond that elevation line there that's depicted in that photo?
Until August of 2019, I would have probably emphatically asked yes. But as you recall, we had a storm event in August of 2019. Many of the roads in Wildwood, Wild Horse Creek Road, Fox Creek Road, Woods Road, State Route 109 had historic levels of flooding. And so anymore, I'm hesitant to say where that water might end up along these drainage tributaries, which is part of the reason the department is supporting the variance. What we found if the Watershed Erosion Task Force is that things are changing out there radically. And a lot of it has to do with the unusual storm events we're having, just in terms of intensity and duration.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nander. Are there any other questions from the board for the petitioner? All right. Are there any speakers in the audience who want to speak in favor of or opposition to the request?
Madam Chair, yes, we do have Mr. Stecker who's raised his hand. Give me a moment, I'll promote him.
Hi, Mr. Stecker. Can you please state your name and address and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Absolutely. Hold on one second. Let me pull you back up here. Okay. Mark Stecker, 1291 Christmas Valley Drive. I am the subject. I'm the property west of the subject property that you all are viewing this evening.
Okay. Ms. Tallman, can you swear him in?
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Stecker.
Again, thank you for allowing me to speak on the subject, since my wife and I are probably the most impacted by the decision, next to the Hiles. I came before the board in September. I provided you all with a PowerPoint of photographs similar to the ones that Joe provided then and again this evening. I'm not going to ask you to pull all those up unless you're interested in seeing them. I think that we've talked about this once before. My argument is still the same as it was in September on the location of the barn being at the distance which was previously stated at 100 feet, based on a couple of issues that we have. First of all, our driveway is in an easement that crosses the corner of their property that, in my opinion, bears a resemblance to the fact that my driveway will look like an entrance to their barn based on the way their barn is placed on the property. I have that concern. Number two, I have a concern that since my driveway is in the corner of their property, the city stated 100-foot setback is not what truly happens in this case. Because my driveway crosses their property, my driveway is within that 100-foot original offset. So if you allow them to build at the 100-foot offset, my driveway is technically already at 85 feet away from their barn, which presents, I think, a visual problem for my property. I think it is all, as was stated in the September meeting, I truly believe that the Hiles would represent top-notch, first-class representation on their barn and their stable. My fear and my wife's fear is that the Hiles decide that they no longer want to reside at that property. They decide they want to sell the property. Somebody else buys the property. They don't have horses. They don't care about the barn. They don't take care of the barn. That negatively impacts my property value. So in short, that's really the concerns I have. Now, to comment to the flood situation, I will tell you, as Mr. Vundovich indicated, we've lived at the property since 2001. The bridge that crosses that dry bed creek has been underwater 3 times. 2 of those 3 times was within the last 2 years. The last time it was about 7 inches underwater. So as far as water crossing either where they want to put their barn or where their barn would sit at 100 feet, it's not going to make any difference. Either way, they would take water directly through that barn. Now, there has been improvements made to try to reduce water issues across that field, and that was done by myself, and it was done more in the intent of saving my driveway than it was drying their field. But they were the beneficiaries of me digging a trench, laying a drain, and piping the water along the western edge of my driveway into the creek upstream of the bridge, and taking water that was coming from properties up above us, both the Kent property and the St. Louis Family Church pond that overflows directly onto the property, and then what was runoff from the property, the property across the street that Joe had the photograph of, with the development of their pasture and their fencing and the horses and the stuff that they've done. They increased some of the water flow down the hillside that came across the road in between the road and our driveway, which would accumulate and then therefore run across our driveway into their property and would soak the field. So we reduced those a little bit. However, the flood problem is still there. To sort of answer Mr. Nador's question about elevation change, there is an elevation change from west to east there. I wouldn't say that that's a distinct line where elevation changes towards the street. There is a slope into the creek bed that's substantial, but as far as going west to east, I think some of the pictures that Joe showed there represent that slope from west to east is pretty gentle. I realize that doesn't help their situation in that the barn location at 100 foot by 100 foot offset, if you look at the drawings that their architect has presented, if they stay at the 100 by 100 foot offset, their barn really has one location that's available. If they request variances, there's other locations that are available. I did not take the time to try to relocate the barn at an 85 foot offset versus 100 foot offset, similar to what I did with the 70 foot offset in September. I just don't have time for that. I've got other things I have to concentrate on. But I still have the same objection that I did before, and that is that it's going to negatively, in fact, impact the value of my property. It's too close to my driveway, even at 100 foot, but that's the rules. I'm willing to live by the rules. I'm not sure I agree with allowing a difference in the rules just based on preference. So that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Stecker. Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Stecker? All right. Are there any other speakers in the audience, Mr. Newberry?
No, there are not.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. See no request for that. Does the Department of Planning have any final comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, and thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, again, I want to reference for record purposes the receipt of a number of comments, a total of 8 regarding this particular matter. You should have received them all either via email or in association with the September 2020 meeting date. The department, as it did in September 2020, is supporting the reduction to the 85-foot distance. Again, much of it is based upon the physical characteristics associated with the property on the north side of the barn. Again, referencing the drainage tributary and the slope area. Again, not to complicate matters, but the department did have a question for the Hiles. Given your neighbor's concerns about the visual intrusion of the stable at an 85-foot distance, is there a landscaping pattern you could establish there to maybe offset and not impact the horses, not have something that would bother them, so to speak?
Yeah, and I can talk to it if we can bring up, and Joe, you're on it, if you mind sharing really quick, or I can just visually add that along
Mr.
that
Heil, if
fence.
you give us a second, Travis will do it for you.
Perfect. Great. So along that fence line that I'll just say parallels Mark's driveway, our plan to address his concern about to provide some separation is to add some shrubs in that area and just build that out and visually separate our pasture from his driveway.
Thank you. I was just curious if you thought that might be an option. Again, it's
Certainly.
not part of the department's recommendation to the board members, but it was something I wanted to ask the petitioner, so thank you for responding. Madam Chair, that's that's all the department has on its recommendation, but I'd be glad to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Director Bunich. Are there any final comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, I have two actually real quick. Just to be clear, could you live within the 100-foot setback or you really can't realistically do that because you'd get into the slope too much? Just kind of review that real quickly for me if you would, please.
If we were denied the 85-foot setback and had to go at 100, we would have more concerns with tree branches, and we would probably need to look at adding some rock, adding some dirt to elevate, or putting some more dirt behind there and fortifying that area to raise the elevation. In well, I shouldn't say a worst case, but in the scenario where we are not approved the variance, we could, but it would add to our cost structure, which is certainly a possibility. But the most honest way to answer the question is yes, but it would be a bit of a hardship.
Yeah, and we would, so based on where the land would be, we would be right up against the creek. And my concern is that creek gets very high. And so there is potential view of the creek going, into the barn. So that was the reason why we requested the additional variance to get as farther away from that creek bed because of, where it is.
Okay. So you could, but if you did, it would just mean that you'd have to build up some of you'd have to put some kind of maybe structure in there.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like a retaining wall or anything, but maybe something like
Yeah,
that.
we would have to do a retaining wall.
Well,
We would
okay.
potentially be right up against the creek, and that's why we're asking for the variance. It is
Okay.
the most not ideal thing to do, to be building a barn right against a creek.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. The other question that I had is, I know that Mr. Stecker has some concerns, and I know you would love to try and address those as best you could. I don't remember the property that's just due south of you. Okay, I think that's right, due south.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did they express any
Yeah.
opinions either in support or
Yep.
against?
So in all transparency, they were 100% supportive of us. And then based on some, agreement that they have with Mark, because they currently, their land slopes also, that they do have, water issues too, and Mark has helped them out. So they want it to be independent from this. So right before the hearing, they were supportive, and then they backed out. And I actually have an email telling me that they backed out to be independent.
I see the dynamics of the neighborhood. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank
I have
you,
no
Mr.
other
Chair.
questions.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner?
Yes, ma'am. Just in a comment to two things. Number one, not fair to say that the creators are in support or not in support of a barn. They're not here to testify to that. This is a recorded conversation. I don't know whether they support or don't support. That's not my business. They were given the opportunity based on the publishings to put their support out there. They chose to not say anything to anybody. To say that you have an email that does or doesn't support your barn is not really fair, because I can say I've got all kinds of emails from people that say they don't support the barn. Number two, you talk about adding bushes between the fence and the driveway. When you do that, you may create a problem in that there's an easement there, depending on how you set your fence up. I have a requirement based on the easement. If you've read the easement, which I'm sure at this point you have, I have a requirement for maintaining 5 feet on either side of that easement. If you place bushes in there, then you're going to need to have the easement rewritten where you maintain your bushes, because that's not my job to maintain your bushes. That's all I'm going to ask about that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stecker.
Thank you.
Right now, I'm going to close the proceedings for a vote if there aren't any other comments. And can I get a vote for a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions?
May I ask one other question before we do that? Is that okay? And this is for Mr. Stecker, actually. Do you, I don't know, I don't see him anymore. Maybe he left, but it sounds like the Hiles are trying to provide something to help with the visual impact that you're concerned about.
I'm sorry, sir. Travis was pulling me in and out there, so I didn't catch what you asked.
Okay, so that's okay. I'm just getting to it. What I want to ask you is, it sounds like the Hiles are trying or wanting to do something that would help remediate some of the visual concerns that you had expressed. If in fact they would put some plantings in or whatever, would that be a good thing from your perspective?
No. Honestly, just being honest, no, it doesn't, because it's, you know, the rules were established by the St. Louis County, and the rules were adopted by the city of Wildwood at 100 foot by 100 foot for a reason. Whether it's aesthetics, whether it's the fact that my driveway is inside the edge of their property, whether it's the smell of the barn, whether it's the presentation of the barn, the rules were the rules. And I'm, you know, if we're going to start bending rules, then, you know, what's to say that I don't request a barn and I don't request to having it 35 feet off the property line directly in front of their house. And then we have to have the same argument over a barn that I've had drawings for 10 years, but just haven't done because I wasn't sure where I wanted to put it on the property.
All right, are there any other questions for the Department of Planning at this time? All right, I'm going to close the proceedings again and call for a vote for a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions.
Mary, I will call or make a motion to approve the variance as requested, please.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. We have a motion to approve the variance as requested. Do we have a second? All right, I'm not seeing a second for that. Do we have another motion?
Well, you know, these things are always so difficult because, you know, I understand that the Hiles want to put a barn in, and I get that. You know, I also understand we want to stay away from the creek.
Though we're just looking for a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions that that they develop a plan for putting some trees or shrubbery or something in to try and mitigate the visual impact to the Steckers. Can I do that?
Mr. Sprunger, I believe you can attach reasonable conditions to a favorable motion to grant a variance.
Okay, we have a motion to grant it with the condition that there's landscaping to make the visual, I don't
To
even know how to
mitigate
word-
the visual, yeah.
mitigate the
impact.
visual impact to the neighboring property. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Frank.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
before calling for the vote, could I just delve a little into the motion? Would it be appropriate, Mr. Sprunger, just to ask the Hiles to submit a sketch of what they plan on doing? So as we can ensure it doesn't create a problem for the neighbor, but achieves what the board would seek?
I think that's perfect, Joe. I think that makes absolute sense.
And again, I'm not asking for a landscape architect drawing, but something that maybe the Hiles or a nursery could prepare for them.
and then that would be approved by the City of Wildwood Department of Planning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, Mr. Sprunger, do you want to restate your motion?
So I make a motion to approve the variance as requested with the condition that a plan created by the Hiles be submitted to the Department of Planning for approval
For landscaping and,
for landscaping and visual mitigation.
okay. Do we have a second for the motion to approve with the condition as described by Mr. Sprunger?
I have a question, I guess, to Mr. Vunich concerning that. Does that take, the Board of Adjustments approves this with that variance? From there, the City of Wildwood works with the Hiles to form the land, to agree to the landscaping. So for all intents and purposes, we are approving the motion, assuming they can put together a reasonable plan. That's not something we will be, that's not subjective to us. That's something you guys will handle.
Yes, based on the motion as was stated by Mr. Sprunger and then restated by the Madam Chair, the department would have ultimate approval authority. But certainly if the board wanted to see it before the approval, the department could forward it on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vunich. Do we have a second for Mr. Springer's motion to approve
Yes.
with conditions?
I will second that, Chair Giles.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. We have a second. All right, at this time I'll call for a vote. Mr. Nandor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman, how do you vote?
Oh. Sorry about that. This is a really tough one, and I understand perfectly what the neighbor is getting at as far as the rules are the rules. And to me, doing the shrubbery and all that is kind of like putting a Band-Aid over the problem. It's really tough.
Madam Chair, Ms. Coleman can pass and then we can go on. and
All right,
return
I'll
to-
come back to you, Ms. Coleman. Mr. Frank, how do you vote?
To approve?
Mr. Sprunger, how do you vote?
To approve.
Ms. Coleman, do you have a vote?
Okay, I guess I will have to approve, but I do have issues with it.
I also am going to vote to approve the variance request with the conditions proposed by Mr. Sprunger, and your variance has been approved, subject to the condition that you submit a landscaping plan to the City of Wildwood Department of Planning to assist with the visual mitigation for the neighboring property.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Nusio.
Madam Chair, as Mr. Newberry noted, that's the only one we have on tonight. You have completed your task, and as always, the Department of Planning is appreciative of your attendance and participation.
Thank you very much. The Board of Adjustment meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night.
See you next time.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.